You're listening to the Spirited Entrepreneur Podcast, a show that's dedicated to cultivating intention, awareness, and flow in business and life. Join your host, Nicole Harlow, and other like-minded business owners in the Spirited Entrepreneur community over at www.thesepodreview.com.
Hi, and welcome to the Spirited Entrepreneur Podcast. This is Nicole Harlow, your host, and I'm coming to you live from my closet. And no, that's not really a cool hipster coffee shop in Brooklyn. That is actually my closet. My closet is where I record these episodes for the Spirited Entrepreneur Podcast, mostly because it is the place in my apartment where I get the best sound. And I live on a very, very busy, very loud Mediterranean village street. So if you've ever been to Malta, where I live, or Italy, or Southern Europe, or Spain, or Greece, you'll know that Mediterranean village streets can be really loud with people screaming at one another, screaming their greetings, screaming their goodbyes. And so I traded city life in Philadelphia, where I used to record meditations and things like that. Used to record meditations with the sounds of sirens constantly in the background. I seem to have traded that with the sounds of ciaos and bonjos and buongiornos being screamed throughout the day, which I love, but it doesn't make for great podcasting background. But maybe one day I'll record it from my balcony and you can really hear just the chaos that exists right below my beautiful balcony. So, welcome to today's show. I'm really excited to talk about today's topic. It's we're going to be going into courage, fear, and honesty when you're first starting out in business. Having the courage to really put yourself out there. But I don't think that this is just for budding entrepreneurs. I think that it's also applies to lots of different levels of business, and it applies to different levels of life too. So even if you're listening to the show and you are not an entrepreneur, I would continue on, because I think that this episode will help you to glean some more perspective about fear, resistance, and courage. And so this comes from a question, a reader question that initiated this entire episode, and we'll get to the question just in a few seconds. But I wanted to say first that right off the bat that there's a free journaling worksheet that accompanies this episode. So the questions that I'll be going over towards the end of the episode, you can also grab the worksheet and you can fill them out right there on the worksheet, and it's really pretty too. You can grab that over at thesepodreview.com/episodes/007. And it's totally not lost on me that we're covering fear and courage on episode 007. I kind of planned it this way. The perfect reader question came in just when I was planning out the episodes, these beginning episodes of the podcast, and I thought, okay, 007, that is going to be the episode where we cover fear and courage, and then also honesty as well. So let's get to our reader question, and then I'll come back on the line and we'll dig into it.
Hi, Nicole. This is Brienne from Portland, and I just wanted to ask you if you had any tips for people who are just starting out in the business. I'm actually just getting started with my business as a health coach, and I'm feeling a lot of resistance to just putting myself out there. Just wanted to see if you had any advice for me. Thanks. Bye.
Hey, so thank you so much for calling in and sending that question. It's a great one, and it's a topic that fear and courage is still something that I, even 8-9 years into my business, is something that I still struggle with on a near daily basis. Even there's fear and nervousness around, recording this podcast episode, for example. Or last night, I taught my first webinar. It was, something I had never done before. And even though I'm not afraid it's not a huge fear of mine, public speaking, but I have to say that it still sends my heart a fluttering when I think about it. And I was actually surprised last night, my webinar, of how nervous I was. I wasn't nervous in the lead up to the webinar, but as soon as the camera started rolling, I was just, sweating and nervous, and heart was fluttering. And yeah, I think that it came across pretty well, and I was pleased with doing it. And I just felt very good and triumphant at the end of it. But it's just to say that, the fear for me and the resistance is still there every day, and it is a constant practice to thoughtfully analyze and go deeper with the fear. And I wanted to really start out with answering the question with a quote from Stephen Pressfield in his wonderful book, The War of Art, which I really recommend. And you'll see at the end of the episode that you can actually get a free copy of The War of Art through our partners, our sponsors, audible.com. But more on that later. This is the quote that I particularly love, and I come back to it a lot. He says, are you paralyzed with fear? That's a good sign. Fear is good. Like self-doubt, fear is an indicator. Fear tells us what we have to do. Remember our rule of thumb. The more scared we are of a work or calling, the more sure we can be that we have to do it. Resistance is experienced as fear. The degree of fear equates the strength of resistance. Therefore, the more fear we feel about a specific enterprise, the more certain we can be that that enterprise is important to us and to the growth of our soul. And I read this quote first because I want this idea really to serve as a framework to shape the rest of this conversation that we'll have together. That both in life and business, we might use fear and resistance as powerful markers or messages of where to go. But I have to say that I'm not completely in agreement with the quote above, even though I do love it and I think that it's a powerful one. I would just add to it. But it's not that I'm in disagreement. I just think that I would like to add a bit of an extra layer to it. And that is that I think there's a deeper level of intuition required, that to tease out the nuances between resistance that's showing up to tell you that it's time to drop a project or change your direction, and the resistance that's due to fear because you should move forward. See, for me, these things are two different types of resistance, and they feel really different in my body too. So the resistance for things I need to let go of usually feels like, I would describe it as a heaviness in my body. And when I actually honor and let go of those feelings, I do wind up feeling much lighter as a result. And something that I also notice about this level of resistance is that there's usually also a level of resentment that's connected with this type of resistance. So when I'm feeling this level of resistance, I can also just kind of scratch the surface just a little bit, and I'll find that there's resentment that's underlying it. But then conversely, the other type of resistance is the one that comes with butterflies in my stomach, fluttering in my chest. It's the kind of resistance that makes my palms sweat and keeps my thoughts racing at night. And when I notice that when I move towards this fear and finally conquer this fear and resistance, I have this feeling of being triumphant, like I've reached a milestone or a small victory in my life. But I wanted to just add this another level of nuance here, just as a bit of an instruction to really sit down with the resistance and the fear and turn it all around in your hands. Hold it in your hands, watch it, feel it, admire it, love it. Right after this podcast, I'm going to add a guided meditation that's about fear. So you might want to supplement this episode with the guided meditation where you can sit down and actually, hold the fear in your hands and see what you can uncover on the fear when you do a bit of like a deeper inquiry. But yeah, I love that quote. I just love it with the idea of recognizing that there is a level of intuition guiding sort of underneath of the resistance to see in what respect does that resistance, what does it feel like to you? Because I know that there are several things in my life that I've felt resistant to. And when I recognized the resistance and I questioned it, it wasn't telling me, this is the thing that you need to go harder on. This is the thing that you need to move towards. It was actually telling me this is what you need to let go of to add more ease into your life. For me, the perfect example of that just came up recently was in January and February of 2015. I was living in Berlin. I had moved from living in my van on the west coast of America, traveling around and living in the van, and it was a really difficult time for me, and so I picked up everything with my partner and we moved to Berlin. We spent a few months living in Berlin, and we quite liked it, but there was major resistance for me that was growing, and I wasn't getting involved in a way that I thought that I should. I was quite reclusive and spending a lot of time inside, and I just wasn't engaging in the way that I should. And so when I sat down and I kind of questioned and inquired into my own heart about the resistance, what I found was not that it was time to, jump deeper and further into life in Berlin. It was actually that maybe it wasn't the right place for me, and it was time to be brave and choose a new path. And that is the path that actually led me here to live in Malta in the Mediterranean. And we had just picked this place at random off of a map and just a few YouTube videos and a few like Google searches to find out more about the country. And we, from the time when I sat down with the resistance to ask myself what it was trying to tell me, and from that time of sitting down and asking the question to moving to Malta was only the span of 3 days. So it was really a very quick move, and it was an inquiry that really paid off, because I found that there was some resentment behind it. There was resentment towards living in a city and feeling like I needed to spend money all the time as soon as I went outside. Resentment for not having enough natural spaces around me, like the beach or the forest. And then also a resentment that was building because of the weather as well. My body wanted to be warm. My body wanted to be in the sunshine, and so that is obviously that's not a question or an issue about business, but it's just a little example about how I do use resistance as an intelligent marker to show me where I need to be moving. To show the things that need to be dropped and let go, and the things that I actually need to push myself into for growth opportunities. So I also wanted to tell you a personal story, something that I haven't shared a lot, but I think it's particularly pertinent to this episode where we talk about courage and fear and honesty. And so this is part of my moment of honesty and of some radical transparency into my life and business. And over the last 8 or 9 years in business, I have definitely failed a lot. I've succeeded a lot as well, but I have done some things that have been total bombs. But that's not actually what I want to talk about. What I would like to discuss is what I see And what I do see around me, other business owners struggling with, is this debilitating pressure that sometimes comes with being a business owner or an entrepreneur to make it appear like you're more successful than you actually are. There's a lot of pressure especially with social media and in the online marketing world and with online businesses, and just in social circles, as you put this idea out into the world and you tell everyone, I'm writing a book, I'm starting a business, I'm starting a blog, and it can be really debilitating, that pressure to show the world that it's successful, that the numbers are up and the readership is up and that people are buying, when sometimes people aren't buying and sometimes people aren't signing up, and there's, you launch something to the world and there's crickets, and that's really hard to rectify, between your worth as a person and your worth as a business owner, and what you tell the world, because if you dig, on the surface, you can see stories of lots of like life coaches or business coaches, etc. And this isn't my industry, but it's just, I think it's a good, connection. There are so many of these stories of like life and business coaches that are so scared to be honest because their work is to help other people have a healthy life or a healthy mindset, or a healthy business or healthy finances. And it's embarrassing to sit down and honestly reveal that you don't have your shit together, that you don't have it all figured out, or even that it's failing, that your business is failing, you're in debt, you're tanking, you're completely depleted. And on some level, this is something that there, at various times throughout my time in business, not consistently, but there have been times where I have just felt disappointed and almost disgusted with like my inability to be honest about what was actually happening in my business. So people would ask, how is it going? How is it going? And there would be this this voice that would come out of me would be like, it's great, it's going so successfully, I've got loads of people, signing up for my yoga workshop, or when in actuality, it's like one person shows up to the class, or you're scrapping change and pennies together to buy some pasta to have for dinner. I mean, for me, that was a reality at some point, several years ago in my life. And you hang all of your hopes on this idea of entrepreneurship, and it's hard. It's really hard. And there's not always the space to be honest. I mean, I think this is why it's so important to have accountability partners or some kind of mastermind group, or just a friend that you can be brutally honest with, to say, you know what, it's fucking hard and right now it's not working, but I'm committed to see it through and to keep going. But social media is not the place, I don't think, to be like, airing your dirty laundry of failures. But I think that you need absolutely a community in your life that you can turn to in those times of honesty. One specific instance in my life, my experience, that really pops into mind when I'm thinking about this level of honesty, dishonesty, and this idea of saving face in business is a few years ago, in 2013, I wrote a book called Chakra Detox, and it took me, I dedicated a good 6 months, I'd say, to writing the book. I self-published it. I did all the design myself, and it was a steep learning curve because it's not something I had ever done before. And I birthed it out into the world, I think in June of 2013. And I have to say that after I birthed it and I put it out into the world, I did suffer from what I could only describe as a sort of postpartum depression. I I think it was just putting so much attention into one thing and then putting it out there in the world. And there was an emptiness behind it because the next big goal or the next big dream it hadn't come yet. I could sort of feel it and sense it in the distance that it was coming, the next project for me to work on. But it hadn't arrived. So there was this void, this blank space in between when the book was finished and before the next thing was, arrived. And it actually took a few months for the next thing to arrive. And it wound up surprisingly being starting my design business, which is not something that at the time I had expected. That was completely unexpected for me. I had some other ideas that I thought I would be moving into, but I see that void in between when I published my book to when I started with my design studio. There was a period of, let's say, about 5 to 6 months, and when I was hardly working on anything, and that was a real, it was quite a dark period for me, but the reason why I tell this part of the story and this part of the journey is because I think I was suffering, in retrospect, I think that what I was suffering from was somewhat of what I would describe as a personality burnout. My businesses have always had me at the forefront, and I kind of carved myself over the years into a niche in the health and wellness market as a yoga teacher, as a nutrition writer. I had something like over 2,000 articles on fitness and spirituality, motivational spirituality, yoga, meditation, nutrition. I've had all these articles published all over the web, and the external of my personality brand did not always match the internal. What I mean by that is writing a book about detoxing and perfect nutrition was not always connected to like eating cookies and drinking wine on a Friday night and or having a cheese and pepperoni pizza. And my yogic practice and my yogic teaching was not always connected to like me like having road rage when I'm trying to get somewhere, or having going through bouts of depression, or feeling like tons of anxiety. And I mean, I feel like at this point, several years have passed, and I feel like those pieces of my personality have integrated more. And really, as you do, like open your ears and you kind of listen around to see and hear the people around you, what I've noticed is that there are a lot of business owners and teachers, whether they're yoga teachers or nutritionists or anything, finance, business. I think everyone is pretty much suffering from the same thing, this personality burnout, the pressure of putting on the face to the world. And there is a disconnect. There's a real disconnect between who you can actually feel like as a person and go through your day to day, and then the you who is the blogger, the you who is writes the books and teaches the classes and is the motivational business guru. It's just recognizing that, and it took me a while to just rectify and accept the fact that it was okay to be all of these things, and really everybody else was all of these things too. There were yoga teachers doing really shitty things. There were, financial coaches that were mismanaging their money. And, I say this I say this in retrospect, especially for people who are just starting out, that it is okay to come to this table in all of the aspects of yourself. The mistake that I made that I see now is I couldn't rectify the conflicts in my personality and my work, and so I dropped everything. I published my book and I just never did anything. Like I promoted it for a few weeks and then I just kind of dropped it. And then I said, you know what? I never want to talk about nutrition again, really. I want to talk about it to my personal friends, but I will not do it professionally. I stopped teaching yoga. I hardly taught any kind of meditation things. And I allowed myself to just unravel from all of the things that were sustaining me. I'm appreciative of doing that because it actually led me to, I think it's what really brought me into the world of design and web design. Because for me, it was concrete and it was not related to my personality. It was work that I could just have someone say, can you build me a pop-up plugin for my website? And I really loved the fact that I could just go and just do it and not have it be ego related, not have it be spirit related, and I could just do real concrete things. But you know what? Like all things, is a pendulum, and it didn't take very long for me to not feel sustained because there wasn't that connective or spiritual element. And so I feel like right now I'm at a good point where I'm integrating all of these pieces, and especially it feels wonderful with this podcast for the Spirited Entrepreneur to be able to connect things like my love of spirit and energy, but also with my love of tracking Google Analytics metrics and good design and marketing and putting all of these pieces together. But yeah, if I could impart any wisdom from my experience, it would be to make sure that you have a place in your life where you can be honest, even if you feel like there's not the space on your platform, so to speak, your social media platform, or that in being the face of your business, you do have to, there's some level of, keeping the mask from slipping. So if you feel like you have to show the world that it's still succeeding, just make sure that you have people and support in your life that you can be honest to, that you can say, oh my God, this is just like, I had this launch and it just fucking bombed. It was just like, no one even signed up and all this, because you're on social media saying like, yeah, join the group, join the launch, everyone's like joining and it's great. And yeah, I'm not telling you to not do that completely. I'm not saying that I'm not actually advocating for complete radical honesty in business. I mean, I think that it is, it's a delicate dance between finding a level of honesty with yourself but also, putting forth your best face in business. But yeah, I'm really happy to have come to a place where I feel like I'm better able to integrate more honesty and more authenticity in my business and reflect all sides of myself, or most sides of myself. But then it's also really important for me to just have that kind of connection, human connection with others.
You say I'm so hard to learn until I know what take off your dress.
So I wanted to offer three steps or three mindset shifts that I think can really help towards combating fear and resistance, especially the type that comes when you're first starting a business or a new project or a new venture. Like for me, starting a podcast or webinars was something completely new to me. So here are some things that I do, or some things that I think would be a great idea. So the first is breaking down the fear. And I see breaking down the fear as the first step, and this is something that I do on a really regular basis, which is breaking down the steps of a project or a goal, and so you can bring more ease into your life. So whenever I start a project, I once I figured out what the goal is and what I'm looking to achieve, and especially if I'm feeling resistance or fear, or if you have that feeling like this is way too big, there's too many components to it. What I do is I spend just like an hour or two, or as long as it takes. I will sit down with a piece of paper. I kind of like to go analog for this one, it's like a pen and a piece of paper. And I will just break down every step of what needs to be done. Hierarchically, I'll break it into little steps. And when I see that and I see the small steps, it actually helps to alleviate a lot of my fear, because I just see it as, crossing and ticking them off the list. And when I can break them down smaller and smaller, then I can start to achieve some of those smaller chunks. So I think that this is a really great way of breaking down the fear. And another thing that I think is really cool, and I don't actually do this enough, and it's something that even writing it down has inspired me to bring it more into my life, is doing some kind of daily, daily feels intense, but like maybe daily or weekly, doing some sort of rejection practice. What do I mean by a rejection practice? It's really getting yourself into the habit or the mindset of receiving rejection, so therefore it becomes easier and easier. It's like a sort of aversion therapy of stepping into fear. And this doesn't have to be rejection in that like you're going to go to a comedy night and you're going to try out for like an impromptu thing and have people throw tomatoes at you. I think so how this corresponds to my life particularly is with the podcast. I would like to be interviewing people for the podcast. And I haven't done or reached out to anyone yet, and I'm feeling a little bit, there's definitely resistance there, because I know that some people will say no. Some will say no because my show is too small. Some will say no because they're too busy, and some will just say plain no because they don't want to. And some people will also say yes, but I'm using reaching out to potential interviewees for the podcast as one of my daily or weekly rejection practices, so I can learn to feel comfortable with the no and not take it personally and not be too sensitive about it, and also not feel that kind of rush of like hot righteous anger. Anger feels a bit too strong of a word, but just that kind of, oh no, what do you mean you don't want to join my show? Well, I don't want you anyway. That kind of childish just feels like an almost immediate reaction to rejection. So I would like to make the practice of daily or weekly rejection practices just so I can get out of that feeling of being super sensitive and afraid of that rejection from people. Yeah, so breaking down fear, we have break down the steps so there's ease, and also create some kind of daily or weekly rejection practices, and make sure that you sit down with intention and kind of track, what's going on there in the rejection practices. So step number 2, or mindset shift number 2, is being more courageous. So finding things in your life that will actively help you to have more courage. I see these things as it's actually just a list of tools, really. So things like affirmations, which I find can be incredibly helpful. Finding some, courageous or fear-based affirmations. They can be as simple as, I am brave. I am loved. I am a warrior. I am fierce. I am not afraid. You have to think, the thing with affirmations that I find is that they are not one size fits all. You have to find an affirmation that really speaks to you, and you'll know. You might have to go through a bunch of affirmations, and they'll change over time as well. Like affirmations that used to give me a real buzz don't necessarily give me a buzz anymore. And so I have to find something new that when I hear it, it just kind of gives me a little zing or a ping in my heart. That's just like, yeah, that is like, oh, that's what I need to hear. I think crystals, some crystals or talismans can be really helpful in developing courage. So I have it can be totally psychosomatic and the placebo effect, and I'm okay with that. But I have crystals that I have, tucked away in my pockets if I need to, fluorite particularly, and just some quartz points as well. And hematite kind of stays around me just because I like the really heavy iron grounding feeling of hematite. I keep those around me when I'm working or when I need them. But I have, power earrings, power ring, power outfits, just things to put on when I feel like I really need that buzz of courage. And, we can't forget power lipstick. I feel really different when I put it in my bright red, fire engine red lipstick than I do when I just have, my bare lips. So do not knock the power of these just little trinkets and things that you have around that can actually bring some more courage into your life when they're used effectively. And, piggybacking off of that is motivational playlists. It sounds kind of trite and simple to say, but I think that music is incredibly powerful, and it's incredibly powerful for shifting my mindset. And obviously what's motivating me to be courageous is going to be really different than you. And actually, my motivational playlist tends to run on the... No, you know what? You'd probably think it was made by a 13-year-old girl, but hey, whatever. I'm not gonna... I have no shame. So I am drawn when I need a burst of courage. I'm probably going to listen to Katy Perry's Roar or Firework, or my favorite woman ever, which is my next thing, is Beyonce. Man, I cannot get me enough Beyonce, especially when I'm feeling like I need to just get some shit done. I need to just change my mindset into a place where there is more abundance, more bravery. I will put on Beyonce and I will just rock out, especially things like Flawless and Girls Around the World, Upgrade You. Oh, I could just, I could go on and on. I mean, Beyonce is really just, she is my spirit animal. And the next thing on my list, unsurprisingly, is I usually come back to WWBD. What would Beyonce do? Doesn't have to be Beyonce for you. You can change the B to any person that you look up to. For me, Beyonce represents someone who is strong, perfectionistic in the best way, in that she is a hard worker. When you watch documentaries about this woman, oh my God, she does everything herself. She is the queen. And if you see her when she's prepping for a tour or her videos, I'm just so impressed by how much creative control she retains of her brand and her business and her music. And she is not just a singer, she is a businesswoman and someone that as women we can definitely look up to. Love her or hate her, you have to say she is strong, powerful. She is a woman that is sitting in the seat of her own goddessness, and I really love that. So, but you know what? It doesn't have to be Beyonce. Who is that like person that you look up to that you think has impeccable taste, wonderful creativity, a great work ethic, someone who is brilliant at their business and really, really shines and inspires you? Because when I need courage, it is always wonderful for me to go back to this person and say, you know what, WWBD, what would Beyonce do in this situation? My last suggestion on this section about courage is books. I mean, books for me have always been like best friends. I have always gotten so much motivation and life inspiration from books. Things that I would mention off the top of my head are something like Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, who I love. The Desire Map by Danielle LaPorte, who that book has really helped me to see the core desires and really just, the core, getting to the why behind what it is that I do. So I definitely recommend those books. But I'd say even looking outside of your industry can be incredibly, illuminating for gathering courage. So right now I'm reading a 600-page interview with the director, Werner Herzog, who, my industry is not cinematography or film or anything, but I'm just finding it's teaching me a lot about fear and bravery and honesty. And he is someone, I think, that lives his life very fearlessly and very much on his own terms. And so I'm just finding it really wonderful. And that bravery is actually transposing into my own life. So I can see the way that it's rubbing off on me just in my thoughts and my actions. So I would definitely say, find books, self-help books, but also books, biographies of people who have done amazing feats in their life, feats of strength, feats of moral rectitude, and, people who just have done wonderful things in their life, and let them lead you by example into creating more courage in your life. So the last one, tip or mindset shift is about honesty and being okay with vulnerability. Some thoughts around this topic that came up for me was I think deeply connecting with your why in business is really paramount. Something that I like to do is to craft a mission statement, like a craft a mission statement for your life or craft a mission statement for your business, and look at that often. And when you come to a place of fear, when you need some courage to start business or start a new project, I would refer back to your why and your mission statement, and this should be enough to drive you forward. If your mission is to help people, then that is deeper than whether you're afraid of public speaking. That is deeper than whether you're afraid of failure. You have committed to help people. You have committed to put your business out there in the world. You have committed to taking your family out of their situation, taking your family out of poverty because you're going to start a new business that's going to help bring some extra money into the house. What is your why? I mean, when you connect with the why, it's deeper than the fear. It's deeper than the resistance. That is the thing that you can come back to time and time again and say, this is my why. This is what's going to propel me forward. This is what I'm going to anchor myself to. And I think that is such a powerful practice. So when you have that mission statement, it doesn't have to be pages. It just has to be the core of why you are doing that. Are you in business because you want freedom in your life like me? If so, then that has to push you through any of the fear of picking up the microphone, the fear of making the call. Always has to come back to that. I am in this to be free. If I don't move from this place of freedom, if I don't push myself out into the fear and the resistance, and I will not have that freedom that I crave in my life. So finding your why will really help, I think, to push through and into the fear and then out on the other side. Of which, once you get on the other side, there probably will eventually be another fear of, as we're constantly, I don't want to get to a place of stagnation. I don't want to get to a place of boredom. As soon as I've broken through the level and I'm above the clouds, I like to sit there and say, okay, I've come to this plateau. Look around me and say, okay, sit here, appreciate the feeling of achievement, appreciate the hard work. But then I start looking around me and say, okay, the next peak is coming up because I'm ready to climb the mountain again. And you just, I see life as just this constant climbing, but pleasureful climbing. Like, it's not like this addiction. There's a difference. There's an addiction to constantly being busy or addiction to have constant challenges. But then there is that healthy pressure and friction of growth. If we're not growing, then we're dying. So I love to just, take that time in between challenges, but recognize that the next mountain to climb is coming right behind it. And, connecting with that why and saying, this is the reason why I continuously climb, why I continuously grow. Good stuff. I mean, I just love talking about this stuff. I think it's important to play by your own rules when it comes to honesty and vulnerability, and really connect deeply to what your ideal life and your ideal business looks like and feels like to you, not to anyone else. This is not measured by other people's level of success and how they're doing business. This is not the get on Facebook and see everybody else has, an ebook opt-in, therefore I have to have one. It's no. Be prepared to be ruthless in going after what you want in your life and what is, your perfect level of success, your perfect business. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Sit down and really dive into those questions and find the answers to those questions. And, and something else that I would say in having honesty and vulnerability as well is just to, it sounds a bit boring to say, but keep testing and keep recording what is going on, what's working and what's not working, instead of blindly moving forward. And this, you need to be honest about what's working in your business. I really do believe that. I think that you need to be honest with the numbers and see where you can trim some kind of fat over on the side, and where you can be putting more of your cream and, all of that good energy into what is actually working. And you'll need to be honest in order to really see, that it doesn't make any sense to completely close your eyes to what the numbers in business are telling you and what the metrics can tell you. And a lot of people are scared of metrics. They don't want to kind of dive into the numbers to see, but it can be really illuminating. And you can find some really positive nuggets in there as well that will show you what people like of what you're doing and where you can put more energy in the future and ultimately find more customers, more success, more pleasure in the work that you're doing. And lastly, when it comes to honesty and vulnerability, I've said it before and I will say it again in this podcast, someone that you can trust to support you on this journey is just beyond measure. You need preferably someone who is also in business, who can understand what you're going through. I just think you just need that. You need that outlet. You need the release. You need a place where you can totally be honest and share your successes and your wins, as well as your deep failures and your deep moments of lacking confidence and uncertainty about what you should be doing.
I want to get you. 'Cause I want to get you.
So I also wanted to offer some questions here for a deeper level of inquiry into the issue of fear and courage. And I think you can either sit here and contemplate the questions and jot down any ideas that come to you, or also you could head over to thesepodreview.com/episodes/007 and grab a copy of these journaling questions to fill out at another time. It's totally up to you. I mean, you can just let the questions wash over you right now and start ruminating on them, and then go over and grab the journaling questions and kind of fill them out, giving your time and your subconscious a little bit of space to sort of mull over the questions. As I was musing on this topic of fear and courage, especially when you're starting out, whether that's a new project or a new business entirely, or anything new really in life, I started to weave together some questions that I thought would be helpful to uncover what's lying beneath the fear, because there is always something lying beneath the fear, and it's important to get down to business, and really see what's going on down there. So I'm just going to go through the questions with a little bit of space, and I'd like if you just kind of muse on them a little bit right now. And like I said, if you want to grab the journal PDF, you can do that as well. So my dream is, what is your dream or the goal? What fear is keeping me from achieving this dream? What is the fear that's keeping you from achieving this dream? And when I look at it closely, the fear surrounding this issue is really about, when you dive a bit deeper underneath the fear, what is under it? What is really the issue that's underlying that fear? Ask it one more question, going underneath. There's always something underneath. It's not just the fear. There's always another level hiding underneath of it. And ask yourself, is there a physical quality to this fear? What does it feel like? Is there a place that you can feel it in your body? Is there a sensation that arises with the fear? Is there some kind of physical quality to it? And we can switch gears and ask, what is the big why behind my dream or my goal? What is the big why? What is the big desire behind my dream or goal? What is the core? And what will it feel like when I achieve this goal? What will it feel like when I achieve this goal, or I achieve my dream, or I start this project? And coincidentally, what would it feel like to not act on this goal? What would it feel like if I never acted on this goal and I just placed it to the side? Would I have feelings of regret? Would I have feelings of disappointment? What would my life be like if I choose not to act on this goal? And then now I'm going through the questions probably a bit quicker than you might have a chance to really stop and ruminate on these questions as much as you would like. But, for the sake of just getting them all in, I'm going to go a bit quicker. But at this point, after you've asked yourself these questions, it would be important to kind of check in with yourself here. after you ask these questions, you should really intuitively know whether to proceed, whether this is a goal that is okay to just hang up on the shelf and you would feel slightly disappointed, but it feels like the resistance is sort of guiding you to not go forward with this. And that's fine. There are tons of projects that I've decided, for lots of different reasons of asking myself these questions, I've decided to just put them up on a shelf because my goal was coming from a very ego-based place. I just did not, it did not fit in with my life, whether it was because it was going to keep me very location-based and I wanted to be able to travel. Asking these questions should give you a good base to know whether intuitively to like proceed forward with your dream. And if yes, I mean if your intuition and both your heart and your mind are saying yes, I should do this. These are my reasons why. This is what it's going to feel like for me to not do it. And this is the fear that I'm feeling. And this is why I'm feeling the fear. Once you have, those questions, then I think the next step is to break it down. So this is, it's time consuming, but it is a simple process. You break it down and say, what are the steps that have to happen for me to achieve this goal? Once you've done that, you go back and you take all of those steps. Say you've decided there are 6 steps that you'll need to achieve this goal. I would go back into each 6 of those steps and I would break those steps down even further. So you have created this mind map plan, like a blueprint of everything that needs to happen to get from where you're standing right now to where you want to be. You would break down the steps in as much detail as you can so you know exactly what needs to happen. Once you have everything mapped out, if that's going to get you from where you're standing right now to achieving your goal, what I'd like you to do are to list out the top maybe 3 or 4 or 2 to 4 top priorities that feel doable, that you can start right now or at least this week to move yourself towards your goal. So when you have that mind map and you've broken it all down, you're just going to look at it and say, what can I start right now? Because while it is important to sit here and journal out about fears and, goals, that's wonderful and it's necessary, but you also need to be taking actionable steps towards your goal. It's really important that every day you are taking some kind of actionable steps. Just journaling about your fear is not enough to move you forward in your business and in your life. You do actually have to do the work as well too. So I like this idea of taking some time to go deeper into the inquiry process, but then actually creating some actionable steps and doing them. So that today or this week, sit down and start moving with your few top priorities. And final questions, which are kind of just all-encompassing mindset shifts that I come back to again and again. And the first one is, who is my WWD, which mine is what would Beyonce do, WW blank D, that I can look to in times of fear. So who is my hero or someone that I look up to that I can kind of, glean inspiration from. So finding out who that person is, asking yourself, what do I have in my arsenal to turn to when fear sets in? Half of this battle is preparation and making sure that you have I have my, my affirmation quote or my favorite quote or my playlist, like these things, or this person that is going to just really lift me up. She's on speed dial. It's making sure that you have these things prepped and ready to go for when you need them. And the last one is the question of, what is my affirmation in the face of fear? Finding that affirmation that does speak to you right now. something that you can turn to when you're feeling fearful and you need an extra little shot of courage and bravery. I love these questions. I hope that they really help you along your journey. Like I said, you can go over to the website and just grab the actual download, or you can just listen to it here on the podcast and write it into your journal. And I wanted to end off this episode with 2 cards that came from Gabby Bernstein's Miracles Now card deck, which is a present that I brought myself for my birthday. That was last week. And I sat down and I asked for some inspiration to bring to this podcast. And I just want to share with you the 2 messages that I received because I thought they were very apt and timely. The first one was, whenever I compare myself to others, I simply say this prayer: the light I see in them is a reflection of my inner light. And it would just, this little quote reminded me that, especially when you're starting out in business, or really at any time, there can be a lot of pressure of comparison, comparisonitis, where you're just looking at what other business owners are doing. And, maybe sometimes feeling envious about, oh, they had 1,000 people sign up for their webinar and I only had, 100, or I only had 10, or I only had 5. And, she just had like a $30,000 month and I'm struggling to pay my water bill, or keep my lights on. And I just think it's important to come back to this when you feel that comparison, just remembering that the light that you see in them is a reflection of your own inner light, and finding ways to brighten that light inside of you. Which kind of leads us perfectly into the second one that popped out. There was like 2 cards that were stuck together, so I give both messages. And the second one was, I make time to recharge my battery. The world needs my energetic light. And 2 things here. One, the importance of self-care and recharging the battery. And the other one is that the world does need your energetic light. The world needs your personality, your sparkle, your business, your ideas. It needs more of you in the world. And in order to do that, and in order to give more of you into the world, you have to be prepared to be brave and to move into the face and the space of fear and move into resistance, and recognize that resistance might just be, like me, it might just be your constant companion for the rest of your life, for the rest of your creative life. It certainly has been the constant companion of every great creative and every great business person and every great leader that has ever existed. And making peace with that and realizing that resistance will be your companion. You can make smart choices to come prepared every day with your battle gear on and your arsenal of, magical potions and tricks that you can use against fear and resistance. Wow. Okay. So, man, that we really went deep here, and I really hope that you gained some sort of nuggets of wisdom from this podcast. And like I said, the next podcast after this is going to be a guided meditation on fear. So if this is an issue that you do struggle with, or if you find, some kind of solace or connection in what we talked about today, then it would be a great idea to just give yourself the 10 to 20 minutes of just sitting down with the meditation and really allowing your subconscious and your psyche to go deeper into the fear. Cool. And before I head off, just a few things that I want to keep you updated about. And the first is that there's a thriving digital community aspect of this podcast. It's a place for you to meet other spirited entrepreneurs, find an accountability partner, be honest and vulnerable, like we were talking about, get inspired and share your business. You'll find your invitation as well as other details about the show on thesepodreview.com. Secondly, I'd love to invite you to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review. Once you've left your review, take a screenshot of it and email the screenshot to the thesepodreview@gmail.com. This is totally optional, but if you do send a screenshot, you'll be automatically entered into a monthly contest to win a Spirited Entrepreneur gift pack. You can find any additional instructions about how to subscribe, leave a review, plus show notes, how to submit a question, recommend a guest, or contact me at thesepod.com. You can also find me on Twitter at HeyNicoleHarlow. The Spirited Entrepreneur podcast is sponsored by the folks over at Audible. They've been really generous and have offered an audiobook of your choice completely free to all listeners of the show. And a book that I think really ties in beautifully with the theme of today's show is The War of Art by Steven Pressfield, which is the book from the quote that I was describing in the very beginning of the episode. So to download your free copy of The War of Art today, go to audibletrial.com/spirited. Again, that's audibletrial.com/spirited. And download The War of Art or choose from one of the 180,000 titles that are available. This is Nicole Harlow, and until next time, have a great day.